perfectly fine.
Hi, Diana.
Hey, Alberto.
I don't think we're muted yet, so I can say hi.
Good to see you.
Likewise.
Hi, Alberto.
Who's that?
Larry.
Larry, he's very reclined.
Larry, you look so comfortable.
I am so comfortable.
You look so comfortable.
It is cocktail hour.
Seeing you like that makes seeing a therapist seem pretty cool.
That's most of what my job is, actually.
I love it.
Diana,
That is, right? These days, it's more about navigating personalities and helping people find
Exactly.
You know, it's a problem is that you guys are all therapists, especially you, Alberto.
Hello, Virgil. How are you?
Another beautiful day in paradise.
We are very grateful to be in Florida and not in Texas these days. I'll tell you that. Our guys are suffering out there.
Have they gotten the power back on anywhere, or is it still mostly out?
Some of our folks have intermittent power. One of them I was texting with this morning didn't have power since like 8 o'clock at night, but still had some running water. And then one of them had no water and no electricity. So it's tricky.
Yeah.
It appreciates our hurricanes that we could plan for.
Speaking of hurricanes, hi, Diana. How are you?
Great. Who is that?
Oh, I'm not going to say.
Is it Virgil?
Yes, ma'am.
I know that voice.
Hi, everybody. My name is Colleen Stovall. I'm the Director of Programs and Events for AIA Miami and MCAD. And welcome to everyone for this event. And in order to get started, I'd like to ask that you please turn off your video and keep yourselves muted if you're not participating in the program. And if you have any questions, please put them in the chat and we'll get to them as soon as we are able. And that's it. So enjoy the program. And I'd like to introduce right now the President-elect of AIA and a principal at MC Harry, Craig Carr.
Thank you, Colleen, and good evening and welcome everybody. Well, Colleen has just told you who I am, and I've been on the AIA Miami board for about 5 years. I'd like to just give a little preamble about what the AIA is doing as far as EDI is concerned. The AIA is committed to broadening our members' access and understanding of justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion in our organization, profession, and in the community. Beyond just mission statements, AIA Miami has and continues to proactively recruit, retain diverse board members and committee members. Our leadership has reflected the people and culture of Miami-Dade County, and we have listened and implemented several actions throughout the years. AIA Miami is a leader in the Women in Architecture program. We have won state and national awards for our education program for minority students with the Architects in the Making program, as well as the Black Architects in the Making program. We have awarded several scholarships and strategically identify and allocate funding to assist students with their education programs at schools of architecture locally. Our leadership has encouraged, supported, and led the reestablishment of the South Florida National Organization of Minority Architects. Our Young Architects Forum and Mentorship Committee take special interest in the development of our minority members. And our chapter's interaction and communication with its membership has never been more accessible than it is today through our town halls and our professional development programs. AIA Miami has led and continues to lead the construction industry in several ways, including being proactive with our actions as far as EDI is concerned. As part of leadership, we have always asked for ideas, for suggestions and initiatives that will improve our profession. And we're doing that today with this particular discussion. So I'd like to introduce you to Nadine St Louis. Nadine is a very good friend of mine. We are on several committees all over doing all different type of things. And she chairs the Diversity and Inclusion Committee here at AIA Miami. She's also Vice President of SOFLO-NOMA, South Florida National Organization of Minority Architects. So with that said, Nadine, over to you.
Greg, thank you so much for the great introduction. Everybody, I welcome you tonight and I thank you for taking time out of your day to talk about a topic that is very charged in the architectural community and in the architectural profession. We're going to talk about diversity and inclusion in the workplace today. So bear with me as we navigate the technology age that we're in right now and I share my screen. So give me 1 second. I'm going to do that right now. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome, that's great. So what we are talking about today is large meets small, how we do diversity. And what we're going to compare is larger firms or the big size firms in Miami, as well as the smaller firms or more medium-sized firms. We want to talk about today how diversity, no matter the size of the firm, large or small, is something we need to encounter. We need to tackle this diversity and inclusion topic, and it is our responsibility to make sure that diversity and inclusion, no matter the size of the firm, large or small, is forefront in what we think about when we hire, when we promote, and when we talk about our firm's leadership. So with that said, I want to read to you a quote that I found from Elizabeth Chu Richter, and I thought it was to the point directly of what's going on in our community today. As it says, architecture ties our communities and each of us to each other. Architecture touches everything: health, wellness, education, history, culture, and beauty. It reflects who we are. To grow a robust and valued profession, prepared to serve the needs of people young and old, rich and poor, all hungry for better communities, better infrastructure, and better lives. Our profession requires talent as diverse as life itself. Just going to go back 1 second. I want to introduce our wonderful panelists today. We have a good friend of mine and great mentor, Vanessa Smith Torres. She's a senior associate at Via Design. Vanessa, can you say a few words about yourself?
Hi, I'm generally a pithy person, so I'm Vanessa. I am also currently the president of South Florida NOMA, so that's something that I'm pretty proud of. And Via Design Studio is a small firm of there's about 10 of us, and all of our full-time staff are female architects. So that's something that's really unique to Via and something that we're very proud of as well.
And next we have a man that needs no introduction. However, I will do my best to give him one. We have Carr. He is a wonderful friend, a true mentor, and principal at MC Harry. Craig, can you just say a few words to sum up the multiple things that you do for the community?
Well, I'll just mention one thing. So I am one of the principals at MC Harry and Associates. We're a 60-year-old firm that specializes in public sector type projects. We are very, very conscious of and proud of the fact that we're a very diverse organization. We have, in checking today, changes a little bit. We have about a quarter of our staff that is white Americans, quarter that is Black Americans, and then Asians and some Hispanics, of course. That was not something that was designed per se. We inherited some of that, and then we continued the work that previous principals have done. And we have benefited tremendously by having a diverse staff.
Next, we have Lawrence Klein. He is the managing director and principal at a beautiful firm in Miami, Perkins & Will. Lawrence, can you say a few words for yourself?
Thanks so much for a great introduction. We are an integrated design firm, architecture, interiors, and landscape. And I lead the studio here in Miami, but I think more importantly, 3 years ago, I joined the Diversity Council of our firm, which really has taught me so much about the depth of talking about diversity and then how you make it actionable in the daily, as you mentioned, the retention, hiring, mentoring, promotion, and focus on a diverse number of colleagues that represent the community.
And last but absolutely not least, we have Diana Farmer Gonzalez. She is the co-managing director and principal at another great firm in Miami of Gensler. Diana, can you say a few words for yourself?
Thank you so much, Nadine, and thank you everybody that's on this panel and joined the call. This is it's a great privilege to even speak on this subject, and one that's very important. Diana Farmer Gonzalez. I'm a co-managing director and principal at Gensler. Gensler is a global design firm. We have 6,000 professionals across the world, very global, in 8 regions. And our office in Miami, we established 10 years ago. I was actually employee number 1, but the firm is 65 years old. And there is an Art Gensler, and our practice is also diverse, and in the 6,000 employees, we have an interesting mix, although can be much better, and that is a very big focus of the firm. We just came out with our diversity report, something that was a focus of the firm this year, particularly to measure and understand where we really are in comparison to the industry, architecture and design, but then to be able to hold ourselves accountable. So our current makeup is around 65% white and 35% Asian, Black, and Indigenous. And, the industry, and I think that we're going to get further into this, the industry average is about 2%. This is where MC Harry is leading the way, for instance. The industry is 2% Black or Black American. Gensler's 3%. But we believe that we, as leaders, of a large firm, have an incredible responsibility for increasing that metric. And we'll talk further about ways in which we are, goals and strategies that we are focused on and measuring. And for our office. We are 95% Hispanic. So, you know, so we have this, and we are 50-50 women to men. That's something that's also really important, you know, as the firm has always been focused on that. But very excited to having this conversation, and that we're continuing this conversation, you know, 8 months in from the catalyst of this conversation.
Yep.
So thank you.
Diana, that was actually the perfect segue to our first slide. So what I want you guys to look at, and what I want everybody to pay attention to, are the two extremes of the slide. So on the extreme left, what you're going to see is a breakdown of different ethnicities. So we have white male up until down to multicultural female. And if you see that on the left, as opposed to what's on the extreme right, you have leadership positions. At the very top, you have the most entry level, and then at the bottom, you have principal, so top of the line in an architecture firm. If you notice this wonderful blue swatch, which is all white male, trickles down and gets to principal fairly even Steven, right? White female, a little less so. But you see these small little dark orange lines and small little dark blue lines. They're hair strands in the principal and associate and upper levels. Now, these darker lines represent minority people, both Black and both male and female, Black, Hispanic, and Latino. So as you can see, the architecture firm, even up until 2018, is predominantly led in leadership by white males. That is a far cry from what it should be and what our goal is for it to be. In keeping that, you can see another diagram here of the breakdown of leadership in between race and ethnicity. So in all white, when they're all white, you can see that all white women generally tend to be a little bit higher, but still it doesn't compare to the overwhelming presence of white males in the leadership positions in firms. The same thing here, you guys can see a running trend, right? There's a running trend of just white male leadership. And that's not to say that that's the only thing in every firm, but what we're here to do and what we need to understand that it's our responsibility to break that trend. Why we're here and why we're talking about diversity and inclusion in the workplace is because we all recognize that this trend is not the trend that needs to happen. This trend is not the way we need to go. This trajectory is not an option anymore. So why we're here is to change it. And we have leading firms, Perkins & Will, Gensler, MC Harry, and Via Designs that all feel this way. Miami can make a difference. We can make a difference. We can change the trajectory of architecture as long as we work together and make sure that we are all working for that one common goal. Another thing that's really noticeable in the workplace is that when you compare men and women, the recognition for drive or work ethic is so much higher you're not recognized for your drive in a positive way, unfortunately, if you're a female in the field. A lot of ways you're thought of as the kind way to say this is opinionated. I myself am very opinionated. But opinionated does not mean that you don't know what you're talking about, nor that your voice should not be heard. Your opinion matters and your opinion counts. Whether you are male, female, gray, green, Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, it doesn't matter. Your opinion should be heard no matter what culture, nationality, or race you are. Now, something that's very interesting, when you look at this graph, what we're comparing here is retention predictions by respondent or gender. And what that means is whether you're male or female, depending on different categories or how you feel in the workplace, is whether or not you stay in that workplace. For example, if you feel like you're not valued at work, you're not going to want to stay there. So it is important for you to find firms, and I am speaking to all the upcoming graduates and people who are looking for jobs. Look for firms that value you, that understand that your voice matters and that your voice is an addition to the firm. If you don't have that, or if firms don't provide that you show value in the people that work for you. Provide that you let them know that their work makes an impact to the firm, or give positive feedback, you're not going to keep the people there. And the idea behind this is to retain as many people of diverse areas in your firm as possible. And we're going to get into that more into the discussion. Another thing to look for into firms, and I want the firm leaders here to think of this when you answer all the questions or when we have our discussion. How are you providing equitable practices in your firm? Are you talking about diversity and inclusion? Are you advocating for people who don't have a voice? Are you discussing equitable practices with everybody? Are you mentoring everybody? Is every person taken into account that works at your firm, no matter how long they've been there, entry level up until principal? Everybody deserves a voice and everybody needs to be spoken to. Another thing that was a little heartbreaking, 2/3 of African Americans can't identify people similar to themselves in firm leadership. That, unfortunately, is something that I, as a Black female, deal with all the time. I've always been someone who's very strong in saying that if you see it, you can be it. So if I can't see a strong female that leads or a Black female that leads, then it's harder for me to think that I can believe that I can be it. However, I can, but we have to give more examples in leadership. Hire people or promote people deserving and, most importantly, of minority that do the work, show up on time, and do what they need to do, so that the younger generations can see that, yes, this is a person of minority, this is a person of color, this is a woman, he or she are powerful, and they can reflect who you are. You can see what you want to be. And finally, most African Americans face discrimination at the workplace. This should no longer be an option. This should no longer be something that we have to deal with. Unfortunately, in this day and age, it is 2021, and we are still dealing with this. It is up to leadership in the firms to make sure that this doesn't happen and to address this whenever it comes about. So I wanted to move through these slides quite quickly because the meat of this topic is the conversation. And I want to make sure that our conversation flows and is meaningful and it gets to the point as possible. So I ask everybody here, diversity and inclusion in the workplace. Let's talk.
Well, can you go back to the two slides?
2 slides. So one.
So I think this is a really interesting graphic because you see the different options, the different actions for diversity and inclusion in the workplace. And what people do, the low-hanging fruit is to hire those from diverse backgrounds. What organizations are not doing as often is evaluate the organization's cultural competence regularly. And that's not happening as often. And that self-evaluation, that self-reflection of what can we do better is what for retention. You can hire and you can hire and you can keep on hiring, but are you keeping?
I take that to you, Diana. I see you nodding, so.
That's exactly right. It's about actually each of these, all of these buckets. It's not this or that, it's this and that. At Gensler, You know, our co-CEO is African American, and she's a woman. We have a co-leadership model at Gensler, because you know our leadership always says everybody has aces and spaces, right? So it's a very complementary model. I co-lead an office with a gentleman named Carlos Valera. So in our office, for instance, we see leadership diversity for men and women. We also see leadership diversity for Hispanic and American or non-American. What our firm did right after George Floyd's death, our CEOs as well as our leadership group said words are not enough. We have to act. And they came out with 5 strategies to combat racism, which actually touches on every single one of those buckets. The first is increase racial diversity within Gensler. How do you do that? Our hiring practices, interaction with universities, university programs that we hire from, are they having diversity practices so that we have a pipeline? Are we educating elementary school, junior high, and high school students to understand architecture? Is there a pipeline of Black and brown and indigenous people within the pipeline of even studying architecture? Are we working in communities of color so that they can even see this as a profession? We have a lot. The second bucket that we looked at was create education opportunities for Black students. So not only through scholarship programs, but are we seeing universities across the country and across the world actually focused on diversity scholarships and diversity education? Pursue equitable design solutions in our cities. How are we going into underserved communities so that with particularly a diverse leadership group that is leading those projects? Like you said, if I see it, I can be it. You know, all of us were inspired to become architects and designers by someone that we could relate to.
Mm-hmm.
But that also has to do with color of our skin, it has to do with also our cultural background. And if we don't see it, we're not going to understand that we can be it. So that means we have to be really reaching into our communities. Our fourth bucket, create job opportunities in the architecture and design industry for Black professionals, specifically Black professionals. And lastly, partner with our clients on diversity and inclusion. Our clients is like we're putting our money where their mouth is, right? Who we work with, what are they, you know, the clients that we work with, what is their diversity and inclusion policies? Are we able to see in their boardrooms diversity and inclusion? How can we move that conversation forward?
Absolutely. I take it to the gentleman now because the women are just heading this conversation.
I'm happy to jump in. And that was great, Deanna. You know, I think what's most important is starting the conversation by saying we're keeping the conversation going. The more that we talk about it, the more that we implement policy, the more we focus on policy, the more change will happen. This week, Perkins & Will and AIA published the strategy paper on JEDI. So diversity, inclusion, justice, equity, and making sure that it's at the top of the mind. And that as a firm, and Deanna is right on point, you have to focus on all of those issues that she mentioned. But then I think what's really important is then you have to go back to the studios and you have to make sure that year over year, the metrics are saying you are improving, you are hiring, you're mentoring, you're promoting, and that the studio reflects the diversity of the community and the country. And I think that is what will take us to that next level of perhaps saying the graphs that you showed tonight, a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road, will start to look more proportioned as we all want them to.
Absolutely. If I could just add to that, I remember some time ago when I came to this country, about 20 years ago, I realized that the office that I was working in had very few people who looked like me. I remember asking my boss at the time, John Martin, God rest his soul, John, why am I not seeing more African Americans working in the profession? And he said, Craig, if you can find people who look like you, who can do what you can do, I'll be the first to hire. The first opportunity that I got, I started to look for African Americans in schools of architecture to recommend for hiring. And there was not a lot. So in doing some research, I realized that the information about our profession is not getting into the communities where it should get. A lot of our community, the students there, see their way out to a more profitable profession through athletics, through entertainment, etc. And so the formation of the Black Architects in the Making program came about from the Architects in the Making program because we realized that not a lot of Black students were attending our AIM summer camp through AIA Miami. And the program goes into many communities of color, and we realize that 90% of the students have never heard about architecture as a profession before. So that said something. The reason why there's not a lot of people in the pipeline is because we're not getting the word into these communities where students can consider the profession as an, as an alternative. And it's been great that firms like MC Harry will allow its staff and so forth to take the time that is necessary to create programs and workshops through our professional organizations like AIA Miami and CAD, etc., to go into communities and to schools that are populated by predominantly minorities, and to tell students in a very exciting way about the profession that we love. So, that's one area in which we can do better in, I think, as a profession, going into communities and telling students about architecture, right? And that's just one step. The other area that we have looked into is actually helping students to not only recruit, but to retain students after they have decided to pursue architecture by helping with tuition cost. Scholarships are extremely important to students of color because of our background, etc. Financially, architecture is a very expensive education for anybody to pursue. And some students have actually dropped out because they just can't sustain the level of expense that is required for you to keep in school. So education is that. And then there is employment afterwards. I do know through NOMA and so forth that there are, Black graduates from schools of architecture who are trying to find jobs and they just can't find jobs. So we've got to be able to open up our firms. And if we can sustain to consider hiring diverse people into our firms, right? Not just because they're diverse or because they're Black. We don't want to be given that impression. But I've seen portfolios that are just as good, whether you're white, Black, Hispanic, or Asian, or otherwise. And we have made it one of our priorities to give students the opportunity to share their ideas and to contribute to the firm. And that's what I've inherited here at MC Harry, and that's what we have continued and have even increased upon, hiring people of color.
The pipeline, increasing the pipeline and opening up
Yes.
that pipeline, because we do have a pipeline problem in this profession, whether it's students not knowing about it from a young age, or taking the next.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You-
Wait.
All right, sorry about that. Or taking, whether it's capturing them in the beginning or getting them to the next step. If you can see it, you can be it. Nadine and I say that all the time. I think Nadine got that from me. But if you don't see yourself, you might make it into school, but you don't see yourself at the firm, or you might get that first job, but you don't see yourself in these senior positions, so you leave because for one reason or another, you feel like this is not a place or a space for you. And so how do you make it a place and a space for you? One thing I always say is diversity begets diversity. It is so difficult. It is so hard to be the first, to be the only, to ask someone to be the first minority and teach your firm how to be equitable, how to improve diversity is just no. So how do you not invite people to the table, but rebuild the table? Let's make a new table. So instead of inviting people to a table that already exists, that reflects ownership already of that table, somebody has built and designed this table in a patriarchy and under white supremacy. So let's just throw that one out and start over.
I'm all for that. I'm absolutely all for that. What I wanted to also touch base on is I love that Diana Gensler and as well as Perkins and Will, they created or they have a report for their firm. Now I want to ask them, were you surprised at the results? Did something in that report surprise you or give you a moment for pause? Or was it everything you expected when you asked the people in your firm, what did I think about diversity and inclusion? Am I included? Do I feel important in this firm? Were those questions you asked, and what was your feedback, if you wouldn't mind sharing?
I'm happy to jump in first, and I just wanted to go back to the previous comment in terms of it's incumbent on our firms to reach out to a greater community for talent. And I think we've become accustomed to talent looking toward us. Mm-hmm. But we have to do a better job of reaching out beyond our local pool, beyond the major urban centers, to really find that diversity of talent in every aspect of those words to enrich our studios. To the point of diversity and measuring it, and what was surprising, when we started measuring diversity and inclusion at Perkins & Will in the Miami studio 4 years ago, we thought that we had a diverse studio because we represented the community. But it came back that our diversity was reflective of the Miami diversity, but not of the diversity of the US. So it's a broader scope, it's a wider perspective that we need to focus on and really do a better job of, as we said, of reaching out, of hiring, retention, promotion, mentoring. And the other thing I would just jump in and say is every year we also go through a pay equity conversation so that every peer of similar skill set and talent and experience is paid in a similar fashion. And I think that's really important to have that abstract and just based on talent.
And you, Diana?
I was not surprised by the makeup of what our reporting. What I was the most surprised, or maybe ignorant about, was the lack of pipeline. And that racism and social justice, we have to start, like we have to rebuild completely. Like you said, throw the old table out. That paradigm has got to, we have to shock the system shock the system beyond, because it's become so acceptable.
Yes.
You know, look, and I think there's also policies that need to change around a couple of things. More women during this pandemic have left our profession than any other time in the last 30 years, right? So think about that, because they have to educate their children at home, or because they're taking on that responsibility. And if you talk about Black women, it's even, the numbers are even more staggering in every industry.
Absolutely.
So we have to continue to do more and be even more intentional around diversity, particularly. I think one of our biggest focus. Look, 18% of our firm is Asian, which is very high in comparison to. Look, we have offices in China. Throughout Greater China and also throughout the Southern Pacific. So that's probably where, you know, most of our numbers are coming. But to be only 3% Black or African, we have to be more intentional about the pipeline around scholarships, around education, around recruiting, and around recruiting within the entire firm, not just like, because we meet our diversity numbers in Miami, we're reflective of Miami, but that's not enough.
No.
Right. I'd like to jump in here because Diana, you mentioned something which I think is worth repeating over and over again. You know, Black women is only 0.4% of the, or should I say, registered architects as Black females in the profession is only 0.4% of the profession. That number is a very anemic number compared to the 6% of Black women that makes up the United States. You know, so we definitely need to encourage and to support the you know, the employment, especially after, you know, we recruit, but the employment and the retention of Black women within the profession. The very interesting thing is I've seen Black graduates leaving School of Architecture and can't find a place to work. That is ridiculous, you know? That is absolutely ridiculous, and we've got to stop that. As employees of firm, we've got to realize that if we're going to make a difference, we have to be very intentional about it. There should not be one Black woman graduating from School of Architecture who is not already being recruited to be an employee of a firm. You know what I mean? Yeah. And mentoring is extremely important as well. You know, some people will say, well, you know, you don't have the experience and so forth to do certain things. Well, you know, we have a responsibility as well to intern and to mentor and to help to improve professionals at all levels, including those who are emerging professionals coming into our firms. Right?
Craig, what's interesting about that 4%, it's unfortunately it's 0.04. We're actually 0.04% of licensed architects in the United States. So and that number is
there are 500 more. That's it.
That's 500. There's 500. I think a high school stadium can fit more than what we have. And that's the problem. That's the problem because we're not seen. We're not being seen. There is that little girl somewhere that does not see a black female architect. She does not see something that she could possibly be. And it is up to us. It is up to the Perkins and Wills. It is up to the Genslers, the MC Harrys, the Guri Matutes, as well as the Via Designs to promote Black architecture, to promote Black females, to promote Black people, because at the end of the day, we're not seen. We have to show who we are, and we have to say, look, it's there. You can do it too. And that's on us. That's our responsibility. And I include myself in this panel because that is my responsibility as well. Me and Vanessa work very hard on that to make sure that everything is seen. Black, female, Craig as a professional, Diana, you're amazing. And everything you're doing, Lawrence, is absolutely stellar. It's
Yeah,
do.
Sorry for
No,
coming
absolutely.
in here, but there's an interesting thing that Naomi Harrison and myself as co-founders of the BAM program have found that's happening, that I think is exciting. That when we go into these communities of color and we tell them about architecture, 90% of them are hearing this for the first time, that there's a paradigm shift. No, when these students think about architects, they think of Black professionals who have come into their schools
Yes.
to talk about architecture. So when they think of architecture, no longer is it an idea of, well, that is somebody else's type of career, but no, they picture mentally, whether they know it or not in their heads, Black architects coming into the school to talk about architecture. And they can see it,
Yes.
they can relate, and they can be it. So it might take a couple of, a few years to get some of these guys going, but we do need more people and more
Yes.
hands to be doing this kind of thing.
And I think too, so that touches the students at the younger age before they enroll in these NAB programs. And a side statistic, if you're recruiting Black architects and want to know where to find them, because you can't find them, 50% of Black architects come from 7 NAB programs. So it's a very small pool that they're coming from. They're coming from those HBCUs. So if you're not recruiting there, there's your action item. You're not doing enough. But once they go into these NAB programs, what are they learning and what are they teaching and what is a curriculum? And do they continue to see themselves reflected? Short answer is no. So, as Nadine is saying, making yourself, if you're a Black architect, if you're a female architect, if you're underrepresented in any way, making yourself visible for that next generation. So I'm currently teaching at Florida Atlantic University, and I had a really great conversation with my students a couple of weeks ago, and they were also surprised to hear that there are only 502 licensed Black female architects. But now they've been taught by one, and I have, been working my way into the curriculum, and their next project, they're going to learn about Black architects, which is not something I really learned about too much in my curriculum. So it's not just getting them at one certain point. It's increasing the pipeline at all areas, opening up those career pinch points where students, where young emerging professionals are looking around and saying, maybe I don't belong here.
Another thing that I want to add to this, Lawrence, I'm gonna get. I want you to speak.
Yes.
I'm sorry. One thing I want to add to us is that we say 0.04% of Black women are architects, and I found a staggering statistic that 0.02% of architects in the United States are Native American. So that is also something that we rarely discuss. And what we need to understand about diversity and inclusion is, I love the topic that, yes, we need to promote Black and we need to promote every people of color, but we need to promote every shade in the rainbow. So I want to talk about not only Black people, I want to talk about Native Americans. I want to talk about maybe someone who is disabled. I want to talk about LGBTQ. I want to talk about every person that is underrepresented in diversity and inclusion in architecture. Everybody should be able to see themselves in an architectural billboard. Why isn't there an architectural billboard with someone possibly in a wheelchair, someone who is blind? There is a blind architect in the world, guys, and that is amazing. That is absolutely phenomenal. So yes, diversity does mean Black, and I am all for Black, all for it. But let's open our minds up and talk about let's open it up and see if we can get the full spectrum. Lawrence, I cut you off. Please continue.
No, sorry, I was circling back, and no worries. I was just going to talk about Zena Howard, who leads the North Carolina practice for Perkins and Will. She has a national platform as an African-American woman architect, heavily involved in the African-American Museum of the Diaspora, in Crenshaw in LA. And I think what's really important is more women like that who have not a local, a state, but a national or international platform to really raise the visibility and the talent and access and show people, you know, the potential that's there.
Yeah, so the challenge there is who's setting up these panels, who's planning this conference, whatever gate you're a gatekeeper of. If you're setting up a conference about getting fellowship, if you're setting up a national conversation about this, that, or the other thing, it's always, you know, checking yourself, and if you're a gatekeeper, what gate are you holding open, and who are you letting through or not?
You know, you brought up something, I don't know if it was, I think it was Vanessa that brought this up, and I've talked with many of my friends that are Black designers and architects, women and men. And one of the things that was shared was that after George Floyd's death, how exhausting it was to educate white folks. educate others, right? That it was very exhausting. And so when I'm going, you know, we cannot take our foot off the gas. Our brothers and sisters of color need all of us to be present. And it's not just people of color's problem. It is all of our problems. We know that diversity of thinking and culture creates better environments and of the built environment. We've known it, we see that it makes a difference in design in our communities and our environment. So if we want a better world through the power of design, diversity has a huge piece of that pie that we have to continue to keep our foot on the gas. Do not let up on the conversation, but we also know that we can't leave it to our brothers and sisters of color to be educating everybody. So one of the programs that we did, you know, is through the Ywca 21-day challenge. One of the things that we learned was how little all of our communities really understood about the cultural divide and the social injustice, the real historic and systemic racism that has been happening for hundreds of years that needs to stop. So there's, you know, architects and designers are some of the most passionate people that I know that have so much energy for their profession. This is another layer that I believe that everybody that's on this call that's interested, there is, your time and talents are needed in our communities of color. I can tell you, if you can sit on a committee for the YWCA, for the YMCA, for the Boys and Girls Club, these communities, if they could meet somebody like you that's an architect, that thinks design thinking, might influence those that you are helping to educate their child, their brother, their sister, because they've met you and they start to see your time and talents as a global innovator and thinker that solves problems in the world. So, you know, no matter what your interest is, not only in our own profession, but in our community, you can make a difference by being involved in something that you're interested in. And
absolutely.
representing our profession by doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. This is everybody's business of making, improving the profession. In improving the profession, everybody will benefit from that. The nation will benefit. I always tell the students that we talk to about, let's look at our music industry and how our music industry is as great as it is in the entire world. It is not because it's made up of just one or predominantly one particular set of people, but because of the diversity within our musical industry. That is why we produce that variety of music that we share with the world. And then so we ask the question, what are we missing out of in the architecture industry? What are we not seeing? And it's not that our architecture industry is not good as it is. It is good, but can it be better? And the answer to that is absolutely yes.
Absolutely.
The more people get involved, the more culture, the more ways of thinking, it will become better and better with diversity and inclusion.
So I know that we're almost out of time, and Nadine, were you going to open up for questions? I don't know if we've got
Actually, yes. I wanted to keep this in mind because we touched on every discussion point that I had listed except for one. Keep this in mind when we're answering any questions that anybody has. Were there any challenges that you had to face when implementing anything having to do with diversity and inclusion? When first bringing that up to the firms, whether it be large or small, were there any pushbacks? Were there any mindsets that were difficult to change? Was there anything that caused some difficulty, or was it more of a smooth transition? And I am going to open everything up to questions. So please, everybody in the audience, type in a question and I will read them off to the panelists.
Great.
So I'm just going to answer that about difficulties. Currently at Via Design Studio, we're privileged to, no one here, I'm the only one that was born in the United States, and that's because I'm from a colony. So we all have very similar backgrounds in that. And the beauty is that we can all bring our whole selves to the office. It becomes a safe space to be who you are. If you people of color know what I'm talking about, that signal shifting when you go from your home space to your professional space. The hoop earrings come off, the red lipstick gets toned down. So here it is that safe space to be your whole self. But I have not always been in that space, and I have been the most challenging space is the one where there are women saying, we have a gender problem. We need to talk about it. And so discussions are had, and the end result is, oh, well, it sounds like we just need to communicate better. It's not necessarily a gender thing. Or blaming the people who are bringing this up, saying, well, why didn't you speak up earlier? You have to, when these conversations come up, you have to take them seriously. You have to listen and you have to act. Because if someone is saying something over and over again and there's no change, they're going to stop, they're going to get angry, and they're just going to leave. And you will not be better for it. You will just be in the same rut that you were always in. So listen, learn, and take people seriously. Create that safe space for them to express themselves.
I'd like to give props where props are deserved. The previous owners of MC Harry, Jim Pearsall and Tom Carlson, were always people who encouraged diverse ways of thinking and diverse thoughts. Our office, when I came here, was already diverse. They listened, they mentored, and by the way, these are two white guys. They listened, they mentored, they did an excellent job in bringing up and training leaders within the community. Lorda Solera, my partner, business partner here at MC Harry, has always encouraged the same thing. So I must say, within a particular atmosphere where you feel comfortable to express yourself and to create and to produce and design is extremely important for every firm, no matter what the size. So that environment here at MC Harry has never been of such that I can, say, we're not free to express ourselves or any ideas that has to do with diversification and inclusion from way before this was a popular thing, So I have to give props to those who preceded me and the encouragement that they gave and continue to give, by the way, for diversifying the profession. So I have not seen that. Even at AIA Miami, I must say, the encouragement, the support, the kind of backative that we get from leadership at AIA Miami has been phenomenal. So I can't think of anything to say I've gotten any resistance, if that answers your question, Nadine.
That is awesome. Yes, that does answer my question. Lawrence, you were going to speak?
I was just going to say, I know we're running out of time, but very quickly, in terms of, I think the more that we've talked at Perkins & Will about diversity, the more complex the conversation is, and the more components that you start to unravel and need to focus on. And I think that complexity is a good thing, and that depth of going through and working through, number one, understanding the issues, understanding where the deficiencies lie, allow you then to start creating a network to start correcting them. But it is a long, complex road, and it's measured in, I think, unfortunately, smaller increments of success. So we need more time to get there, but we're making progress.
Well, we do have time for one question. And the question I have is from Tiffany Montanez. How are each of your organizations facilitating or planning for equitable opportunities and practices internally with the other facets of JEDI? Religious or spiritual practices, disabled, gender orientation, age, parental, etc. Or has the focus been on racial, ethnic opportunities? Which is a great question.
I'm going to answer that. Actually, we have one of our guiding principles at Gensler is we are a we versus I family culture. It's about our people organization is focused on diversity as the number one piece around people, empowerment, community, respect, impact, and growth for LGBTQ, Black, Indigenous, Asian, gender, male, like I said, male, female. So we are actually looking and talking about all aspects of diversity and inclusion. And I was going to echo what Larry was talking about, Lawrence was talking about. The more we've had these conversations, we're a large firm that does have a diverse population, but that has mostly been at times maybe silent about, and now it's like learning a new language of being able to speak openly in the workplace about diversity and about when we have felt that we have not been empowered. So I think it becomes very complex, and it's about us creating a safe place for that to happen. At the same time of running a business during a pandemic, during, and dealing with challenges. So I think going back to something I said earlier, we just cannot take our foot off the gas.
Yep.
But at the same time, there needs to be compassion and love and nurturing of letting people be kind of in the space that they're in as they're coming along in the timeline and the process. There's a lot of healing that has to happen along the way. So I think that has been, how do you stay putting your foot on the gas and at the same time be able to pull back and create a safe and loving environment for professionals to grow.
And with that, I know we're almost out of time. I wanted to get that question in me because that question was really important. I also wanted to read one of the messages that we got today, and I think it's really important. It comes from Stanley Evans. Inclusivity means not just we're allowed to be there, but we're valued. Smart teams will do amazing things, but truly diverse teams will do incredible things within the field. And with that, I would like each of the panelists to say a few closing remarks, and then I'll close for today. I guess I will start with exactly to my right, Vanessa.
So I'm going to be difficult.
Yes.
That was great, Stanley. Great segue. You know, diversity is great. Having people of all different shades and colors is great, but that's not the end game. That's not the process. That's the end game. Because once you have diversity and you put them in a particular place, you see how unfair the world is. And in fact, reality is even more unfair, where people who need the least support have the most of it. So you need to be able to not just treat everybody equally, but treat them equitably, to be able to have them be involved in the profession. And so what justice and equity breeds diversity and inclusion. And what this, you see equity, but what is justice? Justice is throwing out the fence, throwing away the table, and just starting over, removing those barriers. So justice and equity is your path to diversity and inclusion. And I just love these comics because it just makes it visual for us so that you will always remember.
Vanessa, thank you. Diana, you are immediately to my right, so yes, you're next.
Just let's not stop having the conversation or putting our energy towards this important topic, and focus on measurable results.
Thank you. Thank you. Craig, Mr. Craig Carr, you're next.
Well, we can have a lot of talk and statements and all different type of town halls. But what is extremely important is that we need action.
Yes.
We need for things to be happening.
Yep.
And what do we do to act? Well, we need to recruit people from diverse community. We need to retain them when they go into School of Architecture by offering support and mentorship, etc. Then we need to hire them when they're finished with Schools of Architecture and mentor them so that they stay within the profession. And we need to acknowledge their contribution so that we'll all work together to have the type of profession that we'd like to see. So action, and action now.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Craig. And Lawrence, last but absolutely not least.
Thank you. And real quickly, I think this conversation is great, that firms are like-minded in this quest for diversity, inclusion, justice. But what thrills me are the business side. Our clients are demanding the same thing. So we're seeing them in the proposals, in their requests for commission say, you have to show us that you are meeting these goals, that you're representing the community, or we don't want to do business with you. And I think that's a great driver.
Absolutely. I guess I will give the last closing statements to a topic that doesn't close. This isn't the end of the topic. This isn't the end of the discussion. This is just the beginning. What I always remind people is that architecture is about people. Everything we do is about people, from the height of a step to the width of a handrail. We are designing for people. We keep people in mind, but we are forgetting to keep ourselves in mind. We need to remember that we make up the profession of architecture. We think of others. We need to now think of ourselves, promote ourselves, and make sure we are doing the best for this profession. There are people of diversity that deserve a shot. There are people of diversity that need their voices heard, and we have the power to do that. Not only do we have the power, but we have the absolute responsibility. If you're not helping the next generation in the field of architecture, what are you doing? Always remember that. Architecture is about helping people. So let's help people. And in that, let's include ourselves. I thank every single one of the panelists for taking time out of their night, out of their workday to talk about this charged topic, and we did it respectfully. We can talk about these things. We can respect each other and respect ourselves. Thank you and have a wonderful evening. Colleen?
Thank you, everybody. That was absolutely amazing. I appreciate our panel and the people who put this together. Thank you so much, Nadine and Vanessa and everyone who is involved with it. And we will have a survey coming out to everyone. We want to know how we did. So just look for that, and it'll be coming your way in email. And again, thank you, everyone. This was absolutely enlightening and very necessary. So thanks, everyone. Have a great night, and thanks for coming.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Have a good evening.